Hello beautiful people, you're welcome to Naho Blessed Fashion. In today's video, we are going to recreate this beautiful dress inspired by Veekee James. Veekee James dress has zipper at the front. I decided to put my own zipper at the back. If you're putting your zipper at the front, make sure you're using an invisible zipper, alright? You can decide to just gather one side of the dress. It's still going to be beautiful. As you can see, I'll drop the fascinator tutorial hopefully next week. I made it myself as well. So guys, if this is what you like to learn, definitely keep on watching. Now without further ado, let's get started. Okay guys, I'll be using 2 yards of cotton fabric. Make sure you're using a cotton fabric, alright? It's going to help it stand. This is 2 yards. You can use 2.5 yards. I am size 6, so 2 yards is actually okay for me. You will need a bias as well. This bias is somehow brighter than the fabric, so I just end up using the fabric as the straps instead of bias. Okay, so if you get a matching color, is fine. Use an invisible zipper if you're going to attach the zipper to the front of the dress. Okay, so I am going to attach my own zipper at the back because of the gathers in the front. I don't want it to interrupt my zipper, so I'll be using a normal zipper at the back. All right, so to get started, I will draw a starting line, and this line is my shoulder line and the center front. So from the shoulder line, I'm going to go down by my bust measurement. My shoulder to bust measurement is 10 inches and shoulder to waist measurement is 16 inches. Okay, I'm going to ignore my under bust for this dress. So I'm going to create a straight line just like this. This is my shoulder line, my bust line, and my waist line. This dress is very simple, all right? Very simple and classic at the same time. I just love the dress. So I'm going to mark my shoulder measurements. I'm using 7 inches. That's 14 divided by 2. And then my shoulder slant is 1 inch. I'll connect it just like this to my neck width, which is 3 inches. And for the neck depth, I'm going to be using 3 inches as well. If you're a plus size person, you can use 3.5 inches. Okay, 3.5 by 3.5. I'm going to take note of my shoulder measurement, which is 7 inches, and I'm going to mark it as my shoulder, my armhole depth. All right, so 7 inches for my armhole depth. I'm going to create a straight line to the shoulder slant and extend this line just like this, and this is my chest line. I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4 right here at the chest line, and my waist measurement at the waist line divided by 4. Okay, I'll go ahead and add my sewing allowance. I'm going to be using 1.5 inch sewing allowance, and I'll connect them just like this. Next, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple measurements. That's my bust span divided by 2. Okay, I'm going to mark that here and connect it just like this at the waistline and the bust line. Then I'll take my dart of half inch on both sides. I'll come down by 1 inch from the bust and then connect it to the dart legs just like this. You want to come down by that 1 inch so that it's not too pointy at the bust line. I'm going to replace my 1 inch dart at the waist and connect it back to the chest line, to the bust measurement at the chest line just like this. I just replaced my dart. All right, I hope this is clear. I'll get the midpoint here, divide what I have here by 2 and mark it, and then I'll go in by 1/2 inch, and I'll connect these 3 points just like this. Okay, with my armhole cuff ruler, I'm just going to connect it nicely just like this. So because it's a sleeveless dress, I want it to be fitted at the armhole. Okay, so I'm going to take that at the armhole. I'm going to take 1 inch dart at the armhole. So I will take note of what I have here, measure what I have around the armhole and divide it by 2. I'll divide what I have there by 2 and mark it just like this. Okay, mark it down and connect it to the bust point with a curve, just like this. Just the way you do for your princess dart. Okay, I'll take half inch on both sides. Sorry, I use half inch on the upper part and then 0.75 on the down part. I'm going to connect it just like this. Connect it to meet the bust point. Make sure your bust point is not too pointy. Okay, I'm just going to connect it nicely just like this. If you are of a smaller bust, you can just use half inch on both sides. Make sure it's not pointy here, so just blend it well. I'm going to extend this line upwards with 1¼ inch. Extend it just like this, following the curve. Okay, you want to do this so that by the time you join them together, one will not be shorter than the other one. Okay, because of the dart. So make sure you do this. Okay, so replace at least 1 inch, extend it with like 1 inch. Sorry, I forgot to do this. Please, this is very important. I'm going to connect my extension, the extension I did. I'm going to connect it back to the armhole depth, just like this. Okay, make sure you connect it back. So this is our new armhole. All right, and I'm going to cut it nicely just like this. Cut through the dart at the waist all the way to the dart at the armhole. Then cut it just like this. This is a very simple dress that every beginner, even if you're starting today, you'll be able to make this. All right, I'm going to cut my neckline, and because I'm not adding zipper to the center front, I'm going to cut. If you're adding zippers, you can just leave zipper allowance. I'm just going to cut it, and the front will be on fold because there's no zipper at the front. So I'm not going to cut it separately like we do for princess dart bustier. I'm going to close the dart at the armhole, and then the dart will be transferred automatically to the waistline. We are going to do that together, don't worry. So I'll keep that aside and cut the back piece. I create a straight line, and then I left 1 inch for my zipper allowance, and I'm going to create a starting line at the shoulder just like this. Okay, I'll mark my shoulder measurement, which is 14 divided by 2, and the neck width, which is 3 inches, and neck depth is 1½ inches for the back. I'll connect the neck width and the neck depth just like this, and I'll go down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope, connect it back to the neck width. Okay, and then I'll mark my armhole depth, which is 7 inches. I'll make sure I maintain the same 7 inches here. Connect it to the shoulder slant. I'm using the same measurement with my shoulder as the armhole depth, or you can just divide your bust by 6 plus 1½ inches. Next, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4 at the chest line. Divide the armhole by 2 and create the back armhole just like this. I'll be using the same shoulder to waist length as the front piece, which is 16 inches. Okay, you can use your back length, but you have to take your bust dart so that they will align at the end of the day. But I'm just going to ignore that. I'm using the same length, which is 16 inches. I'll mark my nipple to nipple measurement, my bust span divide by 2. And then I'll take my dart of half inch, on both sides. connect it to the chest line just like this. To eliminate my zipper bulge, I'm going to go in by 1/2 inch on the waistline. That's from the zipper allowance we added. I'm just going to take off 1/2 inch and connect it up just like this. So now this is our new zipper line. The 1 inch of our zipper is going to enter our measurement, but I always ignore that. Okay, it will give you a little snatch on the waist, but if you don't want to ignore it, you start your measurement from the 1/2 inch. Okay, so I'm going to take my waist measurement from the zipper line, not the zipper allowance. Okay, from the actual zipper line we created, and then I'm going to replace my dart and add my sewing allowance. Sorry, I mistakenly marked 1.5 inch dart instead of 1 inch, so I just correct that. And I'm going to add my sewing allowance on the chest line and connect them just like this. Basically, just mark your waist measurement, replace your dart, and add your sewing allowance. That's what happened there. Okay, I'm going to add my sewing allowance. I added on the down part. I'll add at the neckline. At the shoulder too, I'm going to add my sewing allowance. I will ignore my armhole. No sewing allowance for that. We are going to be using a bias to turn the armhole, so we don't really need sewing allowance. So we are done with the back piece. Okay, I'm going to cut it out following the zipper bulge elimination line that I just did. Okay, watch me carefully. I'm going to notch my dart and cut out the armhole, my shoulder, and the neck. Guys, please help me like this video and drop a comment if you can. I would really appreciate. So the center front is going to be on fold, like I said. Watch how I'm managing this fabric. Okay, don't go and buy 2 yards and just use it anyhow and say Blessing said we should use 2 yards. Please watch the way I am managing the fabric. So the center front will be on fold, like I said. There's no zipper at the front, right? So instead of cutting this individually, I'm not going to do that because I want to use bias to turn the neckline. So I don't want to use any lining trying to cover up the rough end. So I don't want any joining. I just want it like this. So I'm just going to join the armhole like you see me doing. Okay, the darts we had at the armhole have been transferred to the waist now. As you can see, the waist dart now is bigger than the initial 1 inch dart. I'm going to add my sewing allowance at the shoulder and the neckline, just the way we did to the back piece. Okay, we are going to ignore the shoulder, sorry, I mean the armhole as well. I'm going to add 1/2 inch on the down part. The 1/2 inch on the down part is to join it with the skirt part. Okay, and I'm going to trace my dart. I'll divide what I have there by 2 to get the center. Okay, and I'll create a straight line just like this, and I'll trace out the dart legs. Nicely, just like this. So we're going to stitch it just the normal way we stitch with dart. Okay, I'll go ahead and cut it out. You can pin it down, okay, so it doesn't move. I'll trace out this pattern so I can freely cut it out. Cut it out nicely just like this. As you can see, this is our front piece. Our shoulder dart has been soft. I'm going to notch the dart. So this is how you're going to stitch your dart for the sake of my beginners. You will do that on the both sides of the dress. Remember, we have two pieces for the back and the front is on fold. So stitch down your darts. I'll do that off camera. For the skirt, I'm going to create a starting line up here. I turn my fabric. The side I cut the upper part is now the down part. So I'll mark my waist measurement, divide by 4. Add my sewing allowance of 1.5 inch. The same sewing allowance I use for the upper part. I'm going to mark my hip, my waist to hip. I'm using 8 inches and I will create a straight line. I'll mark my hip circumference, divide by 4, round hip measurement, divide by 4. And I'm going to add extra 4 inches. We want it to be exaggerated from the hip, all right? That's the beauty of the style. So I'm going to add extra 4 inches. 1.5 inch will be for the sewing allowance and 2.5 inch, 2.5 inch will be for the effect, okay? So I'm just going to take note of the length of the dress. So I place my tape on 16 inches, that's the waistline, and I'm going to mark. The highest I can go is 57 inches. Okay, so I'm going to mark that. That's the length of my dress. 16 inches from the waist. And I'm going to mark the length, which is, 56 inches is the length of the dress. Okay. And that was actually okay. If you want yours longer, please make it longer. Okay. So I'm going to mark the same thing I have on the hip line. I'm going to mark it here and I'll add extra 4 inches again at the hem line to give it that A-line shape. Okay, so mark what you have at the hip line. You're going to mark it on the hem line on the length, and then you add extra 4 inches to give it an A-line shape. And then I'm going to connect it to the hip just like this, and I'll connect the waist to the hip with a curve, just the way you see me doing. Make sure this place is not too sharp. Okay, give it a nice curve and cut it out. Guys, I'm sorry I didn't post any tutorial this December except this one. I'm trying to see if I can drop this one today because tomorrow is January already. And Happy New Year in advance. I wish you and your family long life, prosperity, and the Lord bless the work of your hands in 2025. Okay guys, I folded my fabric into 2 to cut out the back piece. Please note the center front is on fold. I cut the front on fold, okay? And for the back, I'm going to be leaving 1 inch for my zipper allowance. So if you are going to put your zipper at the front, you make sure you leave your 1/2 inch at the front and then you cut your back on fold. Okay, so my front is on fold and the back is having the zipper allowance of 1 inch, and I'm going to cut it out following the front pattern just like this. So basically the difference between the front and the back is just the zipper allowance. So this is it. Okay, this is my 2 back piece and this is my front piece on fold. So this is my front piece. I stitched down the dart as you can see. I haven't ironed it. I don't have light at the moment, so I'm just going to use them like that. I'm sorry, this is the 2 back piece. Okay, I'm going to use them like that. I can't on the gen because of this dress. I'll iron it when I'm done. So I'm going to measure the what I have in between the dart stitch. Measure what you have there and I'm going to divide it by 2. Okay, I'm going to divide it by 2 and mark it on the front piece just like this. Okay, divide what you have at the upper part in between the darts stitch and mark it at your waistline. And then for at the hem of the skirt, I'm going to mark 6 inches. Okay, mark 6 inches at the length, and then connect it with the 3.5 inches I have at the waist. Connect with a straight line just like this. If you want your own open at the down part, you can do more than 6 inches. I'm just going to notch them just like this, just so I can get the point on the other side. So I'm going to flip it just like this and connect it the same way I did to the other side. So following the notch I made, I'm just going to connect it. Okay, so this is the lines for the gathers. I'm going to keep this aside and cut out the pieces we are going to use to create the passage for our ropes. Okay, so I'm cutting out on the 1.5 inches. The width is 1.5 inches. The length is the skirt length plus 2 inches. It's better you have excess. Okay, so I marked 1.5 inches, and I'm just going to get 2 of that. We don't need that one, so these are the ones we are going to be using. 1.5 inches width, and for the length, you take the length of your skirt, okay, and add extra 2 inches or 1.5. Add 2 inches. So you make sure before you attach these pieces, you make sure you fold the down parts of your skirt. Make sure you fold the down part first, and then you're going to place this piece. You get one of them, place it at the middle of the line we created. You place it and then fold it inward. Fold one end inward with 1/4 inch. You're going to fold the ends with 0.25. Okay, fold one of the end with 0.25 and top stitch. Fold the second end as well, okay, with 0.25 and stop stitch. Make sure you have a neat stitch. After doing that, I'm going to stitch a straight line at the middle to divide it into 2. I'll do the same thing here as well on the other side. Fold the 2 ends by 0.25 and make a straight stitch at the center. When you get to the down part, make sure you fold the down part first. When you get to the down part, you fold the excess just like this. I've done that. I'm so sorry guys, I'm not going to show you the sewing process because I don't want this video to be too long. I just hope my explanation is detailed, is clear enough for my beginners. So I've done that, and I have also folded my straps. You can use your bias. My bias is not, the color is not matching, so I'll just use the same fabric. Just fold it into 4 to create your straps, your ropes. Okay, so the length, I make sure I have the skirt length plus at least 1 inch. Okay, so I'm going to use my safety pin. Okay, just let it pass through it like this, and then you cover it up, and I'm going to pass it through the casing. Make sure you have 4 of those straps for the 4 different lines. Okay, we have 2 on each side, making 4. So I'm just going to carefully pass it through just like this. You push it in and you drag, you push it in and you drag. Okay, push it in, drag, push it in. So when you get to the waist, you bring it out just like this and pin it down. I'm going to do the same thing to the other three casing. All right, you pin it down. When you get to the waist, we are going to stitch it down. So I've done that, guys, as you can see. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to bring my front piece, place them right side facing, and stitch it down. You can decide to stitch the rope first, the straps. You can decide to stitch it down first before joining the upper part. Okay, so I'm going to join the upper part right side facing and stitch it down with 1/2 inch. This is the back piece, the two back pieces. I'm going to also join it to the upper part of the back, right side facing right side. You stitch it down with the 1/2 inch sewing allowance we added. Okay guys, remember we remove 1/2 inch on the waistline to eliminate zipper bulge. So you make sure you do the same thing on the skirt as well, so that everything will align. Okay, so I'm just going to cut the 1/2 inch. Okay, blend it all the way up just like this, just the way we did to the upper part. You remember? Good. So right side facing right side, stitch it down with 1/2 inch. Okay, 1/2 inch, right side facing right side. So this is the front piece. I've stitched it down like I said, and this is the back piece. I'm going to place them right side facing right side, the back piece and the front piece right side facing right side. Okay, make sure you arrange them nicely, and we are going to join them together. If you're a beginner, you can just pin it down and then go to your machine and stitch it nicely. So we are going to stitch the shoulder with 1/2 inch. Remember, that's the allowance we left. Shoulder 1/2 inch, and the sides we left 1.5 inch sewing allowance. So I'm going to stitch it all the way to the end. 1.5 inch sewing allowance all the way. Okay. So guys, I've done that, and I also attach my zipper. If you don't know how to attach your zipper, I have a tutorial on that in the channel. So I attach my zipper. I've weaved the dress too, and where my zipper stops, I make a normal stitch. I stitch it down all the way to the end. Okay, there's no slit on this dress because it's very open. So this is how we are going to pull to make your gathers. You're going to hold the straps just like that, just like this, sorry. Hold the straps and drag it to make your gathers. It's very simple. Make sure your straps are tiny, just so it will be flexible. Okay, so you're just going to hold it and use your hand to gather it all the way. Gather it to your desired length and you tie it. Okay, you can gather both sides. You can decide to just gather one side. Anyhow you want to do it, it's still going to be nice, and you'll have your beautiful dress. Thank you guys for watching to this point. I love you all, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.